Well, good morning. Here we are again on May 13th, another Wednesday, a beautiful morning out this morning. Still a little chilly, but it's supposed to be nice today, so we can appreciate this sunshine. For a little church update for St. Paul Church, we did have our consistory meeting last night, and we really didn't come up with a definite date to reopen our church. With everything that's going on, we still don't know. Even when we go into the yellow phase here on Friday, you're still only allowed to, they recommend no more than 25 people at a gathering. So that still puts us in somewhat of a situation. So we will keep you updated on when we decide to reopen the church for our congregation. In the news this morning, I heard about Cal State, which is the largest university system in the country. They will not be having fall classes this year. And that has to be devastating for all those students who are getting prepared to go there. I can't imagine being a freshman and waiting to go off to college and find out that you just have to sit at home on your computer, and that's going to be your first year of college. You're going to miss out on those move-in days, which if you had students or maybe yourself that remember those move-in days, weren't they fun? But that won't be happening, and there's other universities, trying to decide what to do also. So, keep those schools in your prayers and all those students also. But today I want to talk about the good old days and how many of us have, at one time or another, have longed for those good old days. And you don't have to be elderly to long for those days. I would think that even now some of our school-age children are probably sitting around saying, I remember when I had to get up every morning and go to school. I had to go out and get on this big yellow school bus, and they would take me to this big brick building, and once I got there, it would be full of teachers just eagerly waiting to see our smiling faces. And if you're a teacher, I'm sure you would agree with that that's pretty much the way you felt every day when you got to school. You just couldn't wait to see all those smiling faces. But how many of us do remember things in the past? We all have our own memories depending on your ages, but I remember the days of the muscle cars, and you didn't really care what kind of gas mileage they gave you because gas was relatively cheap. And also the days of going along collecting pop bottles alongside the road, and because they were worth a nickel, and nickel was added up, and you could even buy gas with your savings from that. So the good old days. I remember on the railroad, the train tracks, which are only about 200 feet behind us here, but I remember watching rail car after rail car full of new automobiles going by. Now they don't put automobiles on them anymore on this track, but and you'd sit there and just dream someday when you could possibly own one of those new cars, and they'd have the big fins on the back where the tail lights were, and you just thought, one day I'm going to have one of those. So what are some of your memories of the good old days? I'm sure you have them, and if you think back, maybe you remember fixing the coal furnace in the wintertime. Wasn't that fun? And taking out the ashes and getting that sulfur smell all through the house, or maybe going out to go to work in the middle of winter, and you get in your car and it cranks about 3 times and the battery's dead because the batteries back then weren't near what they are today. And so there you sat, you can't get to work. You had to call a neighbor or somebody to come early in the morning to jump your car. Or maybe you remember when on wash day, a lot of women had a certain day of the week to do their washing, and so you would get down there Monday morning and you'd do your washing, and then you had to put all the clothes in a basket, carry that heavy basket out to the clothesline to hang up your clothes. And I don't know why, but for some reason it seemed like the clothesline was always about 500 yards away from the house. So you had to lug this basket, quite a distance to get your clothes hung up. And about an hour later, it's going to rain, so you had to go out and bring all your clothes back in. So wasn't that fun, the good old days? Or maybe you remember carrying that 5-gallon bucket with you everywhere you went when your children were young because they had cloth diapers and you had to put the dirty diapers in the bucket. You know, the good old days. You know, sometimes the good old days weren't so good, were they? But also sometimes we just remember the good things of the good old days. We don't really remember the struggles, and there were struggles. Solomon tells us in the book of Ecclesiastes, in the 7th chapter, verse 10, "Do not say, why were the old days better than these? For it is not wise to ask such a question." So Solomon seems to be telling us in verse 10 that it's not wise to ask about the good old days. Yes, our past gives us wisdom, there's no question. But if we constantly try to live in the past, how do we pass on our wisdom to the next generation? How effective do you think you are to someone when you start your conversation with, "I remember when I had to"? Now I know that when I start a conversation like that with our daughters, they're just on pins and needles to hear the story again for the 27th time. You know, I remember when the girls were mostly at home and I'd say, "Did I ever tell you the story about when I was in the Marine Corps?" And they would say, "Well, I know, Dad. Were you in the Marine Corps? Please tell us more." Well, you know, I sensed a little sarcasm in those remarks, so I don't really think they wanted to hear my stories again. But, you know, when we tell our kids or our grandkids, when I was your age, you know, I had to go to church every Sunday morning, every Sunday night. I had to go to Bible study on Wednesday night. I had to go to youth groups and we had to walk both ways to get there. Is this really going to make them want to go to church more? Probably not. But if we tell them what Jesus Christ did in our lives when we were in trouble or when we were alone or perhaps when we were bullied in school or a situation like that, maybe they would want to know more about Jesus and how he can help them through those times. There's a story of a young man, and when I heard this, it made me think of the Forrest Gump movie, if you remember that, back in the 1990s. This young man, when he was in school, he was shy and a little backwards, and he was picked on at times, and he wasn't real popular. And he just wanted to quit school. He just wanted to run away. And of course, his parents wouldn't allow him to drop out of school. So he finally graduated, and he decided to go to the Army. And he went to the Army, and he ended up in Afghanistan. And he was in different battles in Afghanistan. But in this one particular battle, he saved the lives of many of his fellow soldiers, and he received a Medal of Honor for those actions. But before he received that, he didn't receive it until some years later, but he said he was driving down the road one day and after he got out of the Army, and he said this state trooper kept following him. He just knew that he was going to pull him over for speeding or some infraction that he had done. And he finally got home, and the trooper pulled in right behind him, and once he identified himself and found out this was the right man, he said, "Here," he gave him a piece of paper, he said, "Call this number." And he said, "You know, why?" And he said, "Well, it's nothing bad." He said, "It's a good thing, just call the number." So he called the number when he got in the house, and that phone number took him to the White House. And after going through some different people, he finally was told that the president wanted to bring him to the White House to present him the Medal of Honor, which would be an extreme honor to get. But the point of the story is that he now tells people about what Jesus Christ had done in his life. He doesn't go into detail about the events that led up to him receiving the Medal of Honor. He concentrates on what Christ did and how Christ made him the man that he became. So, you know, we can all learn from this. You know, we don't necessarily need to start our conversations, you know, "I remember when," because when you do that, you know, you see the eye rolls and you see people looking for the nearest door to exit from. But if we tell them just what Christ has done in our lives, and not go into detail about all the events and everything, but just how He made us who we are, how He gave us the wisdom and the strength that we have today. You know, people will listen, and people they want that too. And so this may lead someone to Christ. So, you know, when we're talking to our children or grandkids or just friends and co-workers, remember that it's not always the best way to start a story is I remember when. But if you want to talk to them about Jesus Christ and you can sense that they're searching for something, they'll listen. And maybe that's exactly what they need to hear. So until next Sunday, which I will see you here on YouTube again, God bless you. Go out today and enjoy this beautiful day and the warmer weather we're going to have. So until Sunday, we will see you then. So thank you.